talk about Persia and Russia, and the Islamic revolution that's taking place. It's something is beginning, and we're going to have to pay attention to it. Croatia, all the way down to what's that place called? Albania, down to Greece. We're looking at a change in a demographic concerning the Middle East, and it's going to become quite serious. I'm going to let you guys know the role of the USA in this, and I'm going to be as gentle as I can. As gentle as I can. Here's what's happening, folks. I know that the USA is in the middle of an election year, right? So the world is certainly looking at this election, and even though it does not seem real, right? It doesn't seem real. The election is more like I don't know what it is, but it is it's somewhat ridiculous. There are some things are clearly set up. All right, they're set up this way. People have been picked and chosen to do what they do for specific reasons, but it seems like a big show, right? Which really alerts me in my spirit that we have to be on our toes. You know, there are dates that I do have. There are dates that I have. I don't mind sharing those dates with you. So you might want to break out a notebook, all right? But you have to be sober, even with these dates, okay? You have to be sober. Now, you all have heard me say that 2017 is a target date. To the extent of that year, you have no idea. It's not a joke. It's not something for, it's not for popularity, certainly. Most of the things that I say make me unpopular. Go figure. So, before I get started, I'm going to ask each and every one of you to remain sober. Understand that your time here is very limited. That's a pretty bold statement, but you don't have that much time left. You may think you have time, but you don't. You're at the door of something according to scripture and prophecy. What you guys are seeing in the news, what you all are observing, I know it can be very confusing, but understand the final and ultimate goal here. The ultimate goal is to have a system in place in a very different way than what it is right now. The kingdom of the beast is functional because everything is bowing down before it. So what is the goal? That all kingdoms bow down in everything to the beast system, of which there will be a ruler appointed who will rule everything, but he's going to rule it in freedom. He's going to rule it through peace. It will be a utopia. It's not going to be a harsh kingdom like you think. It'll be a utopia. A highly advanced kingdom. Highly advanced. Now we all know, according to the word of God, that kingdom is going to be thrown into darkness. You see, sometimes when we say the kingdom of the beast, we look at something horrific and horrible. No, it's not the way it's going to be. Through peace, he shall destroy many. You know what? That peace is compromise. In other words, to lay down certain things for the sake of peace, for the sake of a combined nation. How many people look at a map and you think that the continent sizes are actually what they are? How many of you do that? Has anybody been in high altitude who have seen the earth in its true perspective? Right? Have you ever done that? Have you ever been in 65,000 feet or higher? You really get a beautiful view of the earth, right? But you notice something, that something is wrong with the maps. You look at the maps and you say, wait a minute, this does not match what I'm seeing, because the sizes are all wrong. They're all wrong. They're just wrong. You look at the United States, it's much smaller than what it actually is. You look at the southern regions, they're much larger than what they are. And so the maps are representing the continents out of proportion. They really are. That's just one element of what's being used in the control system, right? Because they have psychologically duped you already, so that you will interpret different countries differently. You won't see them as a threat, or because they represent something minuscule, you don't think about that at all. Every important state in the United States is not mentioned on the Weather Channel too much. So the least mentioned states are the important ones. You have the internet. You could find that out yourself. You say, wow, every state they don't discuss over and over again are the important ones. Look at what is there. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Most people think that the power consolidation is in Washington, D.C. False. That's false. That is false. Washington, D.C. began one way, but now you could say that's just for public consumption. You think that all the important decisions in the power base is in Washington, D.C. It is not. It's not Washington, D.C. That changed a long time ago. Now you see how duped people are? You have the internet. It's very easy to see the power structure. It really is. Right? But you can't look up these public figures. You have to look up the true employees of the government. Right? The civil servants who have a job year in and day out. They're not elected officials. That's why a president of the United States cannot do anything he or she wants to do. They are a mouthpiece. Russia throws its propaganda against the U.S. So in Russia, people look at the U.S. as this communist nation, honestly. A prison nation. That's how they look at the U.S. Now, Russia has decided to take a side with the Islamic world against the United States and Europe. Isn't it sad that all we have is Europe, ladies and gentlemen? You think that the U.S. is going to do something horrific to its people? I can tell you that the U.S. is going to fight for what's coming up. I can tell you that because the people want to fight. The U.S. is going to fight something, which is going to force most of your elitists away. I can also tell you that the U.S. is going to be under attack. From who? From what is called the Russia Islamic Revolution. Anybody ever heard that term before? That is the new Russia. It's the new Russia. The Russia Islamic Revolution is happening right before your eyes. It's wordplay, right? They don't call it that. You have to make that connection yourself. They don't call it that in public. There is a name for it officially. Who is Russia working with right now? The Islamic people, right? Who are they propping up in your view? You see them propping up Syria, Assad, correct? The U.S. and Europe says Assad's got to go, correct? Russia says nobody's going to touch Assad because they're going to have to fight us if they do so. In fact, they said, if anybody attempts to assassinate Assad or come and take him, that would be within an hour. That would be the trigger to a world war. Thus, NATO forces have recombined their strength, right? And certainly in Germany, parts of the Ukraine, Italy, France, Poland, right? All these places are preparing both their navies, their air forces, and their ground forces. Now, Navy and Air Force, I can see that. Why would they prepare ground forces? It's because Iran is planning an invasion of Italy, the Ukraine, parts of Greece, if Greece does not make a decision, so they can take over Turkey. You see, Iran wants Turkey. Russia is an ally of Iran. All right? Pakistan and Afghanistan will go along with Iran. You guys got that? Even Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan is in support of Iran. India says they will try to stay out, but if an Islamic war began, they'll take the same stance as Pakistan. In other words, they're going to have to fight with those who will gain control over the world. So what do we see here? We see, certainly, we're sitting at the dawn of a war. The pieces are being positioned. There will be missile launches in the weeks and months ahead. I'll say it again. There will be missile launches. There are going to be missile launches. For one, it's too crowded. For two, policy has broken down. We're supposed to have a ceasefire beginning here in a few hours. Yet Turkey and Saudi Arabia are buffeting one another right now. Egypt is on the edge of something because they're feeling pressure from the forces that are in Libya. There are forces, Islamic forces in Libya, that are about to cause something in Egypt. Now, Egypt also is surrounded by Libya, Chad, Sudan, and parts of Ethiopia. Saudi Arabia, there's certain to the west, western Saudi Arabia, there are zones there that nobody wants to go into. Okay, so what we see is a true surrounding of not only Israel, but of also Egypt. You could say this, you could say Egypt and Israel stand alone because ISIS forces, Islamic forces, truly do surround them, all the way to Turkey, right? And then we have Russian warships going in and out or near that are places where our warships are in the Mediterranean. So there are many things happening. God warned us in his prophecies that when we saw Jerusalem surrounded by her enemies, to look up, for your redemption draweth nigh. He said, when you see them surrounded by their enemies, look up, for your redemption draweth nigh. Look up, look up, look up. That's what he said, look up. Now the U.S. being in support of Israel, we have Arleigh Burke-class destroyers in that province, in that region, which has caused Russia not to bring down certain ships they wanted to bring. They wanted an entire flotilla with resupply ships all over the place, but the U.S. put a stop to it. Tensions are rising there too. I bet you the admiral right now has a headache, a bad one, because there is no talking to Putin. No talking to Putin. He's not going to discuss. You know what? Haven't you guys noticed the attitude of Putin? He'll let them talk, and while they're talking, he's doing things. Now, he has set up massive forces in Syria. Massive forces. The only element in his way is Turkey. Turkey can easily be consumed. He only threatened to use tactical nukes because there are nuclear weapons in Turkey. And he knows where to hit Turkey with tac nukes, okay? He knows where to hit them to totally deplete Turkey's ability to respond to further threats. He also has a very advanced missile system. So if Turkey tried to launch anything, they would essentially mess their own country up. All right? And the winds play a great factor in that. There are also biological weapons in the Middle East. Now, folks, we're discussing something real, not some show, not some interesting war movie. This is in real life. Russia in 2013 installed aerial systems, early warning systems that cover Iran, and we were mad at that. Let me tell you what happened with they cover the entire region, by the way. They cover their radar systems, cover the entire country of Iran. It covers Iraq. It covers Syria all the way down into Egypt. It covers all of Turkey, all the way over into the Ukraine and parts of Germany. These are early warning systems They installed them in a hurry in 2013 after they were told not to do it. You see, there were negotiations, and the U.S. lost airspace over there, which is also why we were forced out of certain Syrian airspaces. There were tight lines. Russia expanded their aerial coverage of Syria and just pushed us out of the way. Now, your president, Obama, and his staff, is not all him, it's everybody that's working with him. They decided to back off. They did. They decided to back off. But let me tell you something about a U.S. president, and likely why they're having an emergency meeting, the Bilderberg Group and everything else, because they deal with the money factor, and they're going to capitalize off the inevitable. But let me tell you something about the U.S. president versus other presidents in other countries. We truly do have democracy in this country. The other countries do not. That means whoever's a president in the Middle East, they can do whatever they want to do. They can go against their cabinet advisors and everything else. And whatever they say is law, because when you're president in the Middle East, you have to watch everybody. Everybody's afraid of everybody. And they do that on purpose, because someone would easily assassinate a president in the Middle East. And so there are spies in the government over there, which means a president in the Middle East is more like a king. Like a king. All right? In America, it does not operate that way. The president cannot do everything he wants to do, because in a sense, they're mouthpieces. The real rulers in America are the civil servants who spent 30, 40 years in their specific jobs, who are doing a job day in and day out. And they get the president and other mouthpieces to present it to the people, so that the people can be informed in a certain way that they will go along with what has already been ruled on. The air defense systems in the U.S., they're gonna try to do this silently, but they can't. The East Coast, the boats are gonna go missing, because they're gonna pull them off the East Coast. Let me tell you something. If you ever see ships being pulled out of port, well, then you really better sit up. You better sit up. That implies a target area. That's what that implies, a target area. Don't look at the excuses. Well, we need to pull the ships out because the drain is clogged. That's what they may as well be saying. When they start pulling ships out, you better watch out. When air traffic dwindles, then you know something is happening. Right? Because during the defense net operations, air traffic is minimal. Only U.S. mission essential flights will take place. Mission essential personnel. The corporations right now are preparing like you wouldn't believe. While everybody else is complaining about this and that, corporations and the rich people are preparing. Let me tell you how much they have prepared. They have built a facility. Listen to me close. And they have left hieroglyphics on it to explain to them the society that exists today. They made it out of granite because it will survive the hot temperatures that are coming upon this world. Because they know that most of the population is not going to make it through this transition. They're not going to make it through. War will establish a new paradigm, a new order of government, period. That's what that's going to establish. It is as simple as that. This war coming up is going to establish the subduing of personnel that they need to establish this new kingdom. You see, if things were destroyed, right, and there was a government that was left, you know what people are going to do? It doesn't matter what government it is. Whatever government emerges from this mess, in the guise of peace, They're simply going to begin to service the people. And the people will go along with whatever's said. Most people think it's going to be some kind of violent takeover, right? They're going to come door to door and start shooting people in the head and this, that, and the other. Oh no, that's not even what the scripture says. Through peace he shall destroy many. It also said something else. They that feed of a portion of his meat shall destroy him. Now what does that mean? What does that mean? The same people who listen to this guy, who have been ingesting his words, who are practicing his teachings, who have beheld his miracle working hand, the same people who feed of a portion of his meat shall kill him. Do you know why? Because when the kingdom of the beast is thrown into darkness, everybody realizes, oh, we messed up. When the bottomless pit is opened and locusts come out upon the earth, not a specific area of the earth, ladies and gentlemen, those locusts, they're nothing more than demonic entities. It was also spoken of in Psalms. That same bottomless pit is in the Psalms. Did you know that? Why is it in the Psalms? The Lord is telling us the truth, but we've got to wake up. You got to wake up. And I told you before, I warned everybody, I told everybody last year, 2015, you're going to behold horrific things in the Middle East that are beyond belief. And you're going to see that from the comfort of your own homes. I also warned, do not become a part of the violence. Don't become part of the violence that you'll see in this world. Don't allow yourself to be plucked out. Don't allow yourself to be drawn into things you shouldn't be in. This year, from this moment on, some of you need to learn how to say no. Your niceness, your passiveness has gotten you into problems and trouble. You can't afford to be passive but truthful. Do you not know that being passive, you can compromise the truth? Do you not know that? You compromise truth for the sake of being passive. That's worse than compromising the truth for a lie. I also requested of you all to remember, you don't have to add yourself in a game and choose a side. You don't have to have somebody present a side to you and you have to take it. You're on the Lord's side. You be on the Lord's side. You stand with him, he'll stand with you. Okay? You stand for the world. You stand for this perpetual vomit in the world, and you're going to find yourself outside of the very place you yearn to be. Sooner than you think, you're going to be with the Father, giving answer to what you've done in this earth. Sooner than you think. Our Father has a solution to us, but if you don't believe that your Lord and Savior has a solution to you, for you, if you find it difficult to believe that he actually stands for you, my heart is breaking for you already. It really is. It really is. They're fascinating people with all this dumb alien talk. It is absolutely 100% ridiculous when mankind does enough damage for itself. Listen to me close. Mankind does not have the power to destroy the earth, okay? But they can certainly destroy each other. Demons work through people to accomplish something. There's no E.T. All this alien stuff is just diverting people. And what it's doing is it's training people to allow any spirit into their lives. It's not about aliens. It's about a person inviting demons into their lives. That's what it's about. This world will turn upside down in two ways: psychologically and physically. because the rotation of the earth is going back to what it would be. They know the rotation of the earth has changed every time the cycle comes. And I think we're months away from the end of the down curve to the cycle we're in. Right when we hit the bottom, that's when everything goes berserk. That's why they're telling people about these new planets. Oh, they find, you know what, it's so, you can't really trust science either. They reportedly find one planet, and then they lose it. How do you lose a planet? Because they made it up. And it's really becoming laughable. They're making up stuff, telling the public about all these different things. But I'll tell you this about the heavens. When the red dust begins to fall, what you better do is understand that that is the beginning of the end of everything that you knew. When that red dust comes, when it settles upon the water, when it covers the moon, and the moon turns red, you better know that is the beginning of the end. Not the end of the world, but the end of things that you knew. You better start walking spiritually today, that when that day comes, you'll be okay. You don't know if you have months left. Let me tell you how fast it can get here. Can I tell you how fast it can get here? We could be here today talking on air, and that red dust could begin to fall tomorrow. Do you know why? Because it's a matter of almost like fluid dynamics. Certain parts of celestial mechanics. A lot of static involved, electronic discharges. But it's traveling so fast it could be here upon us before anybody can notice it was even traveling. We know that we live in the time because 5 asteroids have been determined with the same material they dug up. Listen to what they've been doing. These archaeologists have been digging up dust and materials. So we send all these probes out in space, trying to read the debris of a tale of what's really passing, while they woo and awe you with things that are passing the earth in the public's eye. So they're matching up what rock goes with what, so they can find the cycles of when the surface of this planet cracks up. And they found their matches. 35 specimens. 35 samples matched with 35 known objects and dust trails they found in space. They can, through the real type of time measurements, not carbon dating, that is absolutely ridiculous, they can now find out when it's coming back. Let me give an example. Apophis goes by us, listen to this, Apophis goes by us in 2029, correct? Why does it come back 7 years later? It's not coming around until 2029. That's more than 7 years. But when it passes us, it's coming back 7 years later. Do you guys understand me? They quit talking about Apophis because it probably will hit us in 2036. I would go so far as to say it will hit us. It will hit us. All right? But it's coming back 7 years later. So what does that tell you? All this stuff on the internet that you read about the orbits of comets and things of that nature. And they tell you, well, it comes back every 3,500 years. That's hogwash. Why does Apophis go by in 2029 and then 7 years later it comes back? All this talk about these cycles that they have told the public, that they have set people strategically out there to leak a story. Listen, you want to make sure you get a lie into the public venue, then call a story a leak. Everybody runs away with it. Or say somebody died to get this information out. See, what I'm telling you is that you can hardly trust what's out there. But you can see, you'll be able to see that red dust. You're going to be able to see it. You'll understand what a meteor storm is. All right? You're going to see things hitting the earth. And when the great hail begins to form, you'll know that the forces that have held so many things together for so long are out of whack, because physics will break down. You guys are going to experience strange problems, electronic phenomena, you've never experienced before. I'm giving you signs that you can see for yourselves for what's happening. Listen, any demonic entity affects electronics. It's pure and simple. With electronic phenomena, you know you have a demon present or spiritual energy is high. You'll notice that too, weird things happening. But in the skies, you're going to notice a hue. You're also going to be aware that something has happened to the plant life. The plant life is not going to be like it used to be. Many trees are going to die. Listen to me. Many trees will die, and not from insects. They're going to die. Plant life is going to begin to die. All right? You're going to be able to see this with your own eye. No, they're not going to discuss this because it sounds stupid, just to be honest with you. I'm showing you things you're going to see with your own eye. That will be your proof. If you have to see something, that will be your proof. Even now as we speak, forces are exponentially increasing upon the face of the earth. Not gradually, exponentially. Do you know what that means? Magma is on the move under the crust of the earth like you wouldn't believe. It's only a matter of time, of days, until a big poofy explosion. I mean a big magma explosion. The oceans in the South Atlantic and South Pacific, life is going to die there. Get ready for more lobster floating up to the surface, fully cooked. I bet you could reach down there and just eat it yourself, crack it open and eat it, right? It's funny, don't let them beguile you either. You see, while everybody is looking, it is not what you see that can hurt you so much as the things you don't know about and can't see. Most of the volcanoes of the earth are under the ocean. They are not on land. How many of you know that? Have you guys ever investigated the volcanic activity underneath the ocean? That's where most of the horror stories are, under the ocean. Under the ocean. And we're not talking about just, have you guys ever heard of a black volcano? Not because it is black, it's because it oozes out carbon. Black stuff comes out of it. Well, they have other volcanoes where nickel comes out of it. All sorts of things. Now, what is this going to do? Well, let me tell you, let me give you this. As this continues, we have stuff going into the atmosphere. You may know it or have heard about it as climate change. Do you know why climate change is very important? Because it's happening solar system wide. They're having climate change on Mars. In the last 14 years, everything has been heating up, but on Mars and Venus, it's really heating up. I mean, for goodness sakes, you got water trickling down off of certain places in Mars. And the Earth, too, in a like manner, is doing the same thing. And the tilt of Mars is changing, and the Earth is about to get ripped. Listen, the Earth will get jerked in a 2-degree change in its axis. Now, just think of that. Think of a 2-degree change in the axis of Earth in less than 1 minute. You know what happened with that? It's called a double wobble. It wobbles already. But there will be a wobble within a wobble. And the internal wobble is going to be rough and continuous, and it's not going to stop. People are going to be sick for days on end. It's going to feel like you're seasick on the surface of the earth. You know that happens, it's happening right now to Jupiter, a double wobble. It came from the outside coming in. That's why they were in a rush to go take pictures of Pluto. Not because, ooh, let's see what's on there. They didn't want to know that. They can see Pluto and the forces acting upon Pluto from all the way here on Earth. But that's not what they're looking for. They were not looking for the beautiful colors on Pluto. They wanted to see if there were, they have different sensors on what passed Pluto. All right? They showed you the pictures. They're not concerned about the pictures they showed everybody else. They want the magnetic data that came back from the probe. That's what they want. They're not concerned about the pictures on Mars either. They really don't care what's on the surface of Mars. They want to know what happens to it, because it is our warning that we're next. You see, when something happens to Mars, we have about 96 hours before we endure the same thing. So why wouldn't you invest money and put probes all over Mars? That's our early warning system. Then you have other probes that are closer to the sun, right? You have to have those there, because the sun has a bad habit of shooting out these magnetic vortices that nobody ever talks about. Huge magnetic, we're not talking about a flare or anything else. We're talking about a magnetic vortice, which can actually affect our magneto. If one is pointed in our direction, you will not see it, but guess what happens? The sun will turn red just by the photons being dragged in different directions. Light will appear to have changed from the sun. And then it's going to grow a tail. I wonder what the explanation is going to be with that. When the sun grows a tail. When its sister, I guess you'd call it. When those forces begin to act and all the sun's particles begin to drift out to a certain location. I wonder what they're going to say. It's going to look like a teardrop. What would you do if you saw the sun as a teardrop? Of course, you'd have to have some magnificent shades, because it's going to be extremely bright, and then all of a sudden, poof, it'll put out a greater amount of heat, but not the photons. The photons will be redirected to something else. I wonder what people will do, and it will have no light till the second object passes. It will have zero light. You see, when you live in a binary system, when the cold star, I'm just saying cold, when the cold star gets near the one with all the energy, it begins to feed off of the one with the energy. How many of you knew that? Nobody out there studies cosmology? So it takes all the active components, the photons, all the light and heavy particles, the fuel and everything else, and it sucks it into itself. It kind of refuels, right? What is that called? That means the sun is going to go black. It'll go black, but it's going to be twice as hot. They lied to people about an ice age. Let me tell you about this ice age garbage that they put out. In the North Atlantic Ocean, right? You've heard of the Gulf Stream. People said, well, the Gulf Stream has stopped. And some people say, well, the Gulf Stream is still going. I know for a fact the Gulf Stream has not stopped. I know that for a fact. There are sensors in the ocean. You interpret the data, and the Gulf Stream has not stopped. Something else has happened, though. You see, hot water flows on the surface of the ocean, right? It will evaporate, losing what it will do is lose some of its content, and it begins to sink. That water begins to sink at a rate of, I don't know, so many feet per second, which causes the currents in the ocean, right? The cold water is down at the base of the ocean. The hot currents are at the top of the ocean. And salinity is very important. The content, right, of the water is very important. The salt content and everything else. So fresh water at one point stalled this North Atlantic flow, causing Europe to freeze. Europe froze to pieces, right? And that was caused through the melting of the end of the last glacier age. If you look at a weather map on infrared and you see the cloud formations, you're going to notice in the South Pacific Oceans, there's a stalled system that's constantly evaporating. Clouds are coming from this area. Certain parts in the North Pacific, you'll see the same. But the North Atlantic Ocean, you're going to see the flow of clouds in a certain pattern, right? A certain pattern. And as the South Atlantic and the Indian Ocean begin to heat up, that's what causes these storm drivers that hit Florida and things of that nature, right? But something else is happening. Everybody's worried about the hot water not being hot anymore. It's going to be cooled off. But what happens when it gets too hot, ladies and gentlemen? What happens? The cold water at the bottom is going to begin to heat up. And guess what happens? It interrupts the return stream. It causes a superheating event. And that's through volcanism. And then when that happens, the jet stream is affected. And then when that happens, you have massive turbulence in the jet stream. And then when that takes place, the current drivers in the southern hemisphere of the Earth overwhelm the flow of all the oceans. The jet stream reverses. The currents begin to change. They do something weird. Ocean life begins to die. All because of volcanism, not because of your cars or cow farts. Nothing to do with that. The same process is also happening to other planets. What do we see here? We see an increased energy activity inside the Earth. We see increased energy activity inside the sun. We see increased magnetic energies. You see, Mars is a very weak magnetosphere. So why is it strengthening? Because something is activating the components inside of Mars. What I'm saying is this: something is irradiating the core of the planets. Radiation is pouring into the Earth right now. It's pouring into the Earth. Radiation is pouring in to Mars, to the core of the planet. Radiation is certainly pouring into Venus. Where's it coming from? Where's this radiation coming from? From something approaching. We're dealing with greater and greater amounts of radiation. Greater and greater amounts of radiation. Radiation is energy. You know what? If you have a pot that's not boiling in a pressure cooker, you have no problems if the seal is not right. Right? You turn your eye up just a little bit more. What that is you're introducing more and more radiation in the way of heat to that water, causing it to boil. Now, when it won't boil under massive amounts of pressure, it becomes superheated. Then if you allow oxygen to come in there, then for poof, right? Something's going to go wrong. In like manner, something's happening like that to the Earth. That's why magma is on the move like you've never seen before. Some of the conduits that would stretch 200 kilometers, right, down to the source of where magma is normally generated, things of that nature, they too were on a cycle, kind of like the ocean currents. They too have a current, a cooling and a heating type current, cold and hot, right? Of course, you can't call magma cold. You can call it hot. But you had these cooler regions that was solidified back in the rock. What's happening is, it's not cooling. It's heating up, so the rock is disappearing. That's the only thing holding Yellowstone from going kapow. Right? It's the only thing holding Yellowstone back from doing that is that the rock is solidifying. But we have a problem. It's too much energy, too much heat. The heat factor is going up inside the Earth by external forces, which means nobody can do anything about it. It's coming from out there. And what's happening is that our magnetosphere allows photons to enter into to the surface of the Earth harmlessly. You know, that infrared energy is why you feel the heat of the sun. But it blocks ultraviolet, so does our atmosphere and everything else. But what's happening is, through atmospheric compression and changes in our magnetosphere, charged particles are coming in to the surface of the Earth, and they go right through the surface into the core, where they're already, they're just activating the core of the Earth. I mean, making it hyper, like somebody needs to get the core of the Earth some Ritalin to, slow down. But this is a process this Earth has undergone. They won't tell you this. This has happened before. More and more cosmic rays are coming in and heating up the Earth from the inside out. That's going to cause volcanism. It's going to cause a type of swelling, right? They tell you that we have sinkholes because the water is gone and people dug out too much salt. Well, the water is leaving. What happens when magma is flowing under a big circle of water in the Earth? Does not the water begin to evaporate? It can go through a chemical change also. The components in the water can go through a chemical change, and now you have superheated liquid. That happens deep down in the Earth. You can scarcely call it water. You can call it superheated liquid. And if it's ever exposed to oxygen, because most of the oxygen is burned off, so how can you call it water, H2O? That is a really weird things that have been happening underneath the crust of the earth. No one needs to talk about it because you can't go and investigate it. But it's going to become obvious to the point where our oceans, because has anybody ever heard that the oceans will boil? Have you ever heard that? The oceans will boil. What could cause the oceans to boil? What can do that? I'll tell you what can do that. A change in the atmosphere. If something happens to our atmosphere, in less than 2 minutes, the ocean water will begin to boil. If it happens slowly, nobody's going to live on the coasts. No one. And guess what? It's happening slowly. So it's going to be very difficult to breathe on the coasts. It's coming. It's coming. Climate changes, the real type climate changes, spiritual endurance that we have to have, physical changes we're going to feel in our body, emotional changes inspired by the loosening of more and more demons because mankind is inviting them, materialistic destruction, a phenomenon that the Lord's going to do for us and against the world, right? So we have to deal with quite a bit, a lot. But the changes in the crust of the earth will happen at the probably one thing that's going to startle most people, capture their attention, is the overwhelming increase in meteor storms. Now, I have really put forth an effort to warn people of meteor storms that are coming, to make them aware that meteor storms are coming to this earth. Well, now they're going to have to just experience the meteor storms, the crustal displacements, and things of that nature. So guess what? We have to prepare our souls in truth because the change is at hand. And I'll tell you again, August, October 2017, that's your true time. You need to prepare in everything. Listen, everything up to that time. I know the second wave is coming in 302 days. It's going to be 500 times stronger than the first one. And if you go back on the instruments, you'll see the impact of the first one. You'll hear the stories about the electronic phenomenon that took place in space. You'll notice that the sun also reacted as soon as it got in here, and that was very minute. This one's 500 times the magnitude of the first one, and that's in late December it hits. But your true preparation, because nobody knows what that's going to do, but your true preparation spiritually, and the end of that thing is 2017 is a harsh decision you're going to have to make, which means every hour counts. And you're going to see changes in the coming days, weeks, and months like you wouldn't believe. In the coming days, some of you may have to look 3 times because the world is going berserk. Wouldn't it be sad? Is this a sad thought or what? Imagine yourselves in your house. The Lord comes to you and he says, child, stay in the kingdom because this house is going to need you. So the first 6 weeks you're in the kingdom, you're doing everything. A year later, guess what happens to you? You say, well, nothing bad is happening. Then you start slipping up, doing things in the world. And when you do that, sure enough, calamity comes to your home. The whole house is torn apart. And then you say, well, Lord, you didn't warn me. And he'll say, yes, I did. This is how it's going to be with a lot of Christians in the United States of America and abroad all around this world when they start giving up left and right. They're going to say the same thing. Well, nothing's happening. I can relax. Why do you think everybody wants a date? They want a date so they can go back to sleep. Anybody who looks for a date is going to push the button on the alarm clock and go back to sleep. They're going to go back to sleep. Every hour is precious. And when it becomes, listen, I'm trying to stress to you, when it becomes real. When it becomes real, it's too late. Do you understand that? When it becomes physically real, it's too late. There's no more prep time. Now you're in the middle of it. You can only prepare for things before it happens. Once it begins to take effect, you cannot prepare. You have to utilize what you have. Can you not see the mercy and the grace upon our lives? All this time people complain, well, nothing has happened yet. You better thank God nothing has happened yet in your life. But that's not for everybody. Brutal killings, rapes, murders, just you name it, every second of every day. Tens of thousands go missing every single month. No trace of them whatsoever. And you're telling me nothing has happened yet, and you're looking for a date so you can spend time at a bar a little bit longer? You're looking for a date so that you can strategically set up a time when you're going to conform to the word of the Lord? And you refuse to do it today? That's why you look for a date? To that person he will say, depart from me, you worker of iniquity, I never knew you. Anyone who seeks a sign is truly a wicked generation. It's a wicked generation because they don't want to stay prepared. They want a warning so they can get rid of all their trash and then sit up straight like they acted good all along. Like a bad student always wants to know when the teacher's coming back. But the good student is preoccupied with their work. The bad student is peeking all the time. Is the teacher coming? You only peek for the teacher when you're doing something wrong. You only peeked for your parents when you were doing something wrong. Because when you're doing something right, you're in a different mindset. The people who look for a sign are doing something wrong. Jesus said that, not me. He said it's a wicked generation that seeks for a sign. And many people still can't comprehend that. We need to realize that the Father's in full control, that we are His children, and we have no more time. Who will rule everything, but He's going to rule it in freedom. He's going to rule it through peace. It will be a utopia. It's not going to be a harsh kingdom like you think. It'll be a utopia. A highly advanced kingdom. Highly advanced. Now, we all know, according to the Word of God, that kingdom is going to be thrown into darkness. You see, sometimes when we say the kingdom of the beast, we look at something horrific and horrible. No, it's not the way it's going to be. Through peace, He shall destroy many. You know what? That peace is compromise. In other words, to lay down certain things for the sake of peace, for the sake of a combined nation. How many people look at a map and you think that the continent sizes are actually what they are? How many of you do that? Has anybody been in high altitude who have seen the earth in its true perspective? Right? Have you ever done that? Have you ever been in 65,000 feet or higher? You really get a beautiful view of the earth, right? But you notice something, that something is wrong with the maps. You look at the maps and you say, wait a minute, this does not match what I'm seeing. Because the sizes are all wrong. They're all wrong. They're just wrong. You look at the United States, it's much smaller than what it actually is. You look at the southern regions, they're much larger than what they are. And so the maps are representing the continents out of proportion. They really are. That's just one element of what's being used in the control system, right? Because they have psychologically duped you already, so that you will interpret different. But it is somewhat ridiculous. There are some things are clearly set up. All right, they're set up this way. People have been picked and chosen to do what they do for specific reasons, but it seems like a big show, right? Which really alerts me in my spirit that we have to be on our toes. You know, there are dates that I do have. There are dates that I have. I don't mind sharing those dates with you. So you might want to break out a notebook, all right? But you have to be sober, even with these dates, okay? You have to be sober. Now, you all have heard me say that 2017 is a target date. To the extent of that year, you have no idea. It's not a joke. It's not something for, it's not for popularity, certainly. Most of the things that I say, but talk about Persia and Russia, and the Islamic revolution that's taking place. It's something is beginning, and we're going to have to pay attention to it. Croatia, all the way down to, what's that place called? Albania, down to Greece. We're looking at a change in a demographic concerning the Middle East, and it's going to become quite serious. I'm going to let you guys know the role of the USA in this, and I'm going to be as gentle as I can. As gentle as I can. Here's what's happening, folks. I know that the USA is in the middle of an election year, right? So the world is certainly looking at this election, and even though it does not seem real, right? It doesn't seem real. The election is more like I don't know what it is. It'd be unpopular. Go figure. So, before I get started, I'm going to ask each and every one of you to remain sober. Understand that your time here is very limited. That's a pretty bold statement, but you don't have that much time left. You may think you have time, but you don't. You're at the door of something according to scripture and prophecy. What you guys are seeing in the news, what you all are observing, I know it can be very confusing, but understand the final and ultimate goal here. The ultimate goal is to have a system in place in a very different way than what it is right now. The kingdom of the beast is functional because everything is bowing down before it. So what is the goal? That all kingdoms bow down in everything to the beast system, of which there will be a ruler appointed